Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Allison Bainbridge. I am hosting the event today, and we know that you have an abundance of choices these days for virtual events, and so we really want to tell you how much Book Passage appreciates you tuning into our events for discussions with authors. Our discussion today is with two fabulous authors, Martha Hall Kelly and Meg Donahue. We are so thrilled to continue to provide quality events virtually, and we will continue to do so as there's no shortage of fantastic reads coming out regularly, along with the spectacular authors that write them. Lilac Girls, the $1.5 million copy best-selling novel, introduced readers to Caroline Faraday, an American philanthropist who helped young girls released from Ravensbrück concentration camp. Now in Sunflower series, which is a second prequel, our author tells the story of her ancestor, Georgiana Woolsey, a Union nurse who joins the war effort during the Civil War, and how her calling leads her to cross paths with Gemma, a young enslaved girl who is sold off and conscripted into the army, and Anne Mae Wilson, a Southern plantation mistress whose husband enlists. We sold so many copies of Lilac Girls at Book Passage when it came out. As a booksellers, we just recommended it constantly to anyone who came in looking for a historical fiction read. Historical fiction is actually an extremely popular genre currently. In fact, we have a whole table display in our store just based on historical fiction, and we're constantly changing it out and adding because so many people are looking for it. So Martha Hall Kelly has given us another one to add to our table. She is the New York Times bestselling author of Lilac Girls and the first prequel, Lost Roses. She lives in Connecticut, where she spends her days filling legal pads with stories and reading World War II books. She says that she still has to pinch herself over the success of Lilac Girls. And we also have Meg Donahue. She is the USA Today bestselling author of You, Me, and the Sea, How to Eat a Cupcake, All the Summer Girls, and Dog Crazy. She has an MFA in creative writing from Columbia University and a BA in comparative literature from Dartmouth College. She was born and raised in Philadelphia. She now lives in San Francisco with her husband, 3 children, and a dog. Now to you.
Thank you so much, Allison. Hi, Meg. How are you?
Hi, Martha. I'm great. Thank you, Allison. It's so great to be here. I'm thrilled, Martha, to be here with you, especially celebrating this amazing, wonderful novel, which, as I told you a few moments ago, I just finished yesterday. And I really didn't want to put it down till I was done. It was just so compelling. And I can't wait to speak with you about it.
Nice. And I'm reading your book, You and Me and the Sea. And it's so good. California, I mean, does it get any better, especially when you're in freezing cold Connecticut? But you had me at that when you talk about the dream where she swallows the bird. I was just like, oh my God, I love this book.
Oh,
but anyway, I think I am supposed to introduce a video that Random House put together. And it's just a little introduction to my 3 books, Lilac Girls, Lost Roses, and now Sunflower Sisters. And we'll be right back after that's over. It's not long.
Apologies, everybody. Let me retry that video.
Hi, everybody. Martha Hall Kelly here. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about my new novel, Sunflower Sisters. I'll miss going out on book tour this year, but at least I can still come to you from my home and connect with readers around the world. You may be familiar with my first two books about the Woolsey Faraday family, Lilac Girls and Lost Roses. I thought I'd share a bit about the research and historical inspiration behind those novels and how they paved the way for Sunflower Sisters. I first learned of a fascinating woman named Caroline Faraday in 1999 when I read an article in Victorian magazine about her famous gardens. The article showed photos of Caroline's home in Connecticut, now known as the Bellamy Faraday House, and photos of her renowned garden, filled with roses and lilacs. I love lilacs and really wanted to visit, but with 3 young children, I had little time to spare. But one Mother's Day, my husband Michael urged me to go, and I visited the estate, unaware that the trip would lead to my first novel. I was the only visitor on the tour of the lovely old home that spring day. During the tour, I came upon Caroline's desk, and a photograph of a group of young women caught my eye. The guide referred to them as the Rabbits and told me that Caroline took up the cause of these young Polish girls after they were experimented upon by the Nazis at Ravensbrück concentration camp. She brought them to America for rehabilitation, and once I heard their story, I was fascinated and set out to learn everything I could about them. My goal was to write a fictionalized account of actual events and to perhaps breathe new life into a story that seemed to me had fallen from public view. I started my research at the Bellamy Faraday House and then traveled to Paris, where I found another archive of Caroline's letters to immerse myself in. In Poland, I was lucky enough to interview a Ravensbrück survivor and took the train to Germany to see the concentration camp. That's a day I'll never forget. While writing and researching Lilac Girls, I came to love Caroline Faraday's mother, Eliza Woolsey Mitchell. The daughter of one of the famous Woolsey women of New York City, known for being staunch abolitionists and philanthropists, Eliza ended up devoting her time to the cause of white Russian emigres, former aristocrats in Russia who lost everything when the Bolsheviks seized power from the Tsar in 1918. When the emigres arrived in New York City, many of them destitute and traumatized, Eliza helped the women find work and a place to live. She even opened her own apartment and Southampton cottage to them. I began to embark on a new journey that inspired the story of Lost Roses. I created a wall with the other characters I wanted to add, Eliza's aristocratic Russian friend Sophia and a Russian peasant girl, Marinka. To bring the story alive for readers, I traveled to Russia and explored everything from the Tsar's palaces to rustic villages. I visited Long Island, New York, and peeked past the privacy hedges of Southampton's Gin Lane into the famous shingle-style cottages and estates. And in France, I discovered a lovely, little-known Russian part of Paris. But the place I drew the most inspiration from was again the Bellamy Faraday House. From the archives there, I used Eliza's and Caroline's letters and other personal writing to bring this story to light. This incredible family wouldn't let me go after 2 novels, so I traveled further back in time to the Civil War to tell the story of Caroline's great aunt and how she fought to be a nurse on the battlefields of the war for the North and to be part of the fight against slavery. That's how Sunflower Sisters was born. It's told from Georgiana Woolsey's point of view, and also from the points of view of 2 fictitious characters, Gemma, a young woman enslaved on a tobacco plantation, and Anne May, the mistress of that plantation. Many of the historical events in the book are drawn from the Woolsey family letters in the archives at Caroline's house. One letter, which described the sisters seeing a slave market in Charleston, a site that set them on their path to abolitionism, sent me to South Carolina to start my research journey to see the market they described, now a museum. Luckily, I lived in Atlanta at the time, near the Atlanta History Center, with an extensive collection of Civil War artifacts where they shared their deep knowledge of everyday life during the war. I also visited former plantations, now museums, every chance I got, in the surrounding area. Since Sunflower Sisters is set in Maryland, a border state, Sauterley Plantation was especially inspiring, on the banks of the Patuxent River. A key part of Sunflower Sisters takes place in Gettysburg on the battlefield, so I spent a lot of time there, tracing the steps of the characters so I could write about the place as accurately as possible. My son, who I dedicated the book to, came with me on those trips and helped me document my research. Gettysburg is such an incredibly moving place, and it was helpful to visit the actual sites of scenes in the book. The field hospital where Georgie and her mother, Jane Eliza, actually nursed soldiers, Union and Confederate alike, to the train station where the wounded were sent off in cattle cars, to the hallowed ground where Gemma gets caught up in battle. Caroline Faraday was a staunch supporter of civil rights. I think she'd be happy to know that her abolitionist Woolsey ancestors' stories are being told. It's been bittersweet writing Sunflower Sisters, the last in a series of books about Caroline Faraday's incredible family. But whenever I miss these characters, I know where I can find them. In the pages of Lilac Girls, Lost Roses, and now Sunflower Sisters. And I hope you will too.
What a fantastic video. Oh, I think you're muted, Martha.
Thank you, Random House, for the video. That was so nice of them to do that.
I loved that. What a great video.
Thank you. Well, you know, I was lucky that they wanted to do that. And I was coming back from Florida at the time. I spent February in Florida. So we just stopped at Gettysburg really quick and did a little footage and took other things that we had. So it was really fun.
Wow, it really sets up the whole trilogy so nicely and gives such a nice glimpse into all, you know, how this all came to you, all of these characters and the history, how you stumbled upon it.
It's fun watching it, actually. I was kind of engrossed because, you know, I started in 2020 actually writing it. And when you think that's a long time. And so it's fun to kind of see it encapsulated like that.
Wait, you started writing which in
Lilac Girls. Yeah, started the whole process.
2010.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. 2000. What am I saying? 2020.
Yeah.
I'm a really fast writer. No, 2000.
Okay, 2000. Wow. Yeah. So you have been living in this world and with these characters for a very long time.
Yeah, they're like my imaginary friends. I'm sure you do the same thing with your characters. It's so great.
Okay. But I've never written a trilogy, and I experienced what you're experiencing with the bittersweet feelings of letting these characters go. But I think on a smaller scale, because I've just never spent, you know, for me, it's just one book that I live with them. But for you to have lived for this many years and this many books with this family is really special.
Plus, I didn't start as, I mean, you're so young and you're so lucky that you got a head start. I didn't get writing until I was in my 50s. So I think that makes me even more attached to them for some reason, because it was my first book and I've spent so much time at the Bellamy Faraday House with the archives and all the people there. So to leave that is kind of sad. But on the other hand, I feel like 3 books is kind of a really beautiful number. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm moving on to other projects. So that's always fun. But it is fun to see it all kind of encapsulated there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I have so many questions for you. I hardly know where to begin, but
hey, that's so fun.
I think there's so many things that I love about your novels. The first that I'll just say, this is more of a statement than a question, is just how much I love your female characters, your main characters that you write, three main female characters for each of your novels. And they're all just the kind of characters, even the ones that I love to hate, I still love to read about. They're these very strong, opinionated, you know, and I guess I am mostly referring to the heroes of the books, but they are just such brave, strong women and they have this, they're so straightforward in the way that they approach life and their problems. And you even, I know this is sort of strange to read to you from your own book, but I'm going
Oh, no, I love that. No one's ever done that before.
Oh, good. All right. Here's a first. This line is just early. It's on page 17 of Sunflower Sisters, but it just reminded me so much of all of the characters in your book so much when you write, this is Georgie speaking, who, this is when, at the very beginning of the book, when she's attempting to break into being a nurse for the union. And she's responding to this doctor who's interviewing her and really giving her a hard time. And she says, "Only martyrs tolerate hardship when simple solutions can be found. Dr. Compton, I do my best to solve problems." And I just think that's so true for all of your characters in such a wonderful way. And honestly, just something I admire about them all so much. They're all problem solvers throughout history, throughout different, walks of life. And they're all just really striving to do good and to solve problems. And it's such a joy to read those strong female characters who are doing that.
That's so nice. I just got a little chill when you read that. I kind of forgot. Don't you do that with your books?
Yeah.
I kind of forgot that was something that my brain had created. But yeah, I think that, don't you think that there's a little bit of us in every character? I know they're very distinct, but I think I really like solving problems. And especially right now, these days, I just crave problem solving. So I think maybe I gave that to Georgie. I think Gemma, I think actually all three of the women, and you make a good point. It's such a good insight that the women from the other books do the same thing. Even the bad characters, even Berta Oberhauser from Lilac Girls was trying to solve her own problems. And maybe I just do that unconsciously because I really want to kind of solve my own stuff. So I give them the ability to solve their own problems, but they do get into a lot of problems. So there's a lot to solve there.
Yes. Sometimes being straightforward and brave doesn't steer you clear of hardship, and you can dive right into a lot of extra problems being that sort of person. But
yeah,
I can tell that you're that kind of person because the books that you're writing are brave, and even the style that you write in is so it's a straightforward, approachable, immensely readable style, and it just,
oh my God, can I get a verb? Immensely
so
readable.
Readable is such a weird word, but you know what I mean. They're a joy to read.
I strive for readable.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so that's really great. Don't you write the book that you want to read? I mean, yeah. And I like a readable book. I don't need too much kind of description and, a lot of, inner turmoil. I just need, the basics. So thank you. That's a huge compliment.
Absolutely. So now I'll actually dive into my questions, not just my statements. But I'm also a fiction writer, but I don't write historical fiction. So when my novels require research, it's not an immense amount of research. So I have I admire all of the research that clearly goes into your books so much. It's just exhaustive. And I mean, it just really seems like every inch of these historical characters, these real people, their lives so well, and that must take an awful amount of work and time. And so I'm so curious to maybe hopefully have you speak a little bit about your process for research. And I'm curious whether you give yourself a set time, like how much are you thinking ahead when you jump into a project? Are you thinking, I'm going to spend, I don't even know, 6 months researching and traveling and gathering sources and information, and then I'm going to spend X amount of time writing, or is it all mixed together? What's your process?
Wow, you ask the best questions. I love these kind of questions about process. I was really lucky early on. I just went up to this house because of the lilacs and discovered this kind of buried story. I swear Caroline just kind of like tapped me and was like, well, she's as good as anybody to tell this story, because I think she had been trying to tell the rabbit story,
Okay.
you know, about these Polish women. And I came along and I think she was like, okay, now you can tell it. So I became obsessed with her archives. And for years, I just went down there, and I had 3 young kids. And whenever I could, I would go up there and just learn about her. And she was a huge gardener and she loved roses, and I do too. So, you know, I was kind of studying her. And it wasn't until my husband
Were you
got
doing
a
that? Were you doing that intentionally? Like you knew?
no.
No, it was just you didn't know why you were doing it, but you were doing it.
Yeah, I was just curious about her. And I actually asked my sister to keep it completely secret. I do not know why. I think I was afraid people would think I was crazy, but I was just fascinated with Caroline. And so one day, my husband and I went to see a play in the city, in New York City. And it, we went with another couple, and I just started talking about it with this other couple. And the female half of the couple, her name is Betty Sargent, she said, oh, this is really interesting. We have a new Polish daughter-in-law, and this would make a great novel. And did Mike tell you I'm a book editor? And I think you should write it. All I need is a chapter. And that was the first time, I swear to God. And I had been researching at that point for like, I don't know, 5 years. And I thought, that's crazy. How do you even do that? But I thought, oh, James Patterson writes, right? No one knows me. I can't just write a book. So anyway, then we moved down to Atlanta, but I had all this Caroline stuff, all of this research about the Woolseys too, and about her mother. And so I went through the drive-through, my usual at Starbucks, and ordered my usual decaf cappuccino grande. And I got a caffeinated one by mistake. And I went home and it all just started coming out. And then I said, you know, I'd gone to Catholic school as, you know, in high school, and the nuns always used to talk about this ecstasy that they felt when they married Jesus. And I used to think, wow, you know, I want that ecstasy. And that day, I just thought, why did I not do this before? And
Wow.
so I sent Betty her chapter, and that was it. She kept saying, okay, send me more, write dialogue, blah, blah, blah. So that's how it all got started. But I had no intention of writing a book. So that's how I did my research, almost like I didn't do it in connection with writing a book. So when the second book came along, well, when Lilac Girls became, I guess, a hit, you could call it, I went back to Random House and said, I want to write 2 more books, because I figured, you know, I want to be a writer and they can't deny me if they've already bought 2 books. And so I went back in time about Caroline's mom. And then, so that was easy because I already knew all the info about Caroline growing up. And then with Sunflower Sisters, there's a whole wall of archival boxes in the archives. And I read every one of those Woolsey letters when it came time for this. I knew that I had to do it. And it was actually really interesting because Jane Eliza, Caroline's great grandmother, my character's mother, and they're all named Eliza somehow weirdly, but she's Jane Eliza. And I got to know even which of the girls of the 7 sisters was writing to her mom just by their handwriting and by their attitude. It was really interesting. So that's all I had to do because I already knew everything about them already. And of course, travel was, you know, you saw from the video, I went all over the place. And for Sunflower Sisters, spent a lot of time in Maryland because I wanted to have a border state as the state setting, because there were both Confederate and Union sympathizers in Maryland. And also slavery, I didn't realize this when I first started writing, was not abolished in the border states until the very end of the war. So that gave my story some runway.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And were you, when you were reading all of those Woolsey letters, were you simultaneously writing chapters, or were you like taking notes on the letters and then later, at a later date, you sat down to write? Or how much of it is happening at the same time?
You know, that's a really good question. I think that I do these outlines. I think if you ever write historical fiction, oh my God, the outline is the hardest thing. And it's just this, for me anyway, it's this giant sheet of paper that has 3 rows, each one for a different character. And it's all the seams. And so, because they all have to line up with whatever is happening, especially the Civil War, World War, all the wars, it has to, there are people out there that will write you letters about,
Sure.
I put a stink bug in Lilac Girls, and a bug person contacted me and said, 1957, there were no stink bugs in the United States, only 1958. And so I was like, please, I'm off a year. But anyway, so I think I was pretty much, so I knew what scenes I was going to be writing, but it was hard because it's a chicken or the egg, because how do you write the scenes? For example, I found one of the letters that talked about the Charleston slave market and how the girls had gone there with their mother, and they were, it's a really moving letter. I actually have it if you want to hear it, but it's such a sad letter. And I thought I have to open the book with that. So if I hadn't read the letters, I couldn't have done the outline. So I guess to answer your question, I did them both at the same time.
And then did you, so you have your historical figure, Georgie Woolsey, and then the other 2 figures who are fictional. Did they emerge from your research, or did you sort of have them in mind before you started researching and then use your research to give them life?
They kind of developed at the beginning, because it's really hard for me to do the outlines without knowing who the characters are. So, and I knew I wanted an enslaved character because these women were such staunch abolitionists. And then I thought, for conflict, we all love our conflict. I knew that, what better conflict could there be than the mistress of the plantation where Gemma is enslaved. So I knew I wanted those 2 characters. It was just a matter of, so I was living in Atlanta at the time, and I was going to a lot of museums, former plantations, and that was super helpful. And as I was, going through some of those tours, it helped me develop those 2 characters. And also I read so much first person literature from the time, and that really helped me a lot too. So yeah, they just kind of evolved.
Wow, I just find this fascinating. And how do you, there's so much research that you're talking about and so many sources. Are you an extremely organized person? Do you have like a whole system for keeping track of everything that, when you're writing the chapter and you want to remember something, do you have an easy way to find that info? Or are you digging for it? What's happening?
I have thousands of these pads. I don't know if you can see them up close, but what is on here? I don't even know. Oh, this is for my next book. But I have thousands of these. Well, not thousands. I have a lot of these. And so I could have a better way of doing it. Honestly, I'm not that organized, but I do. I am a little bit of a control freak. I like to know where all of those crazy pads are.
Mm-hmm.
That's my system. And those, what do you want to see one of the outlines? Why don't I show you the outline?
I would love to.
It's kind of hard. Gigantic, but if I stand up, so
wow.
that I just have to write super small. I don't know if you can see, but so once I have that, I feel like, okay, that feeling when you look at the blank page, and I know this is a cliche, but that alleviates my issue with the blank page. So it's really, really nice.
Yeah, that actually leads into another one of my questions about your process. I feel, in addition to this like fear of the blank page, which a lot of writers talk about, we also many of us talk about our very messy first drafts, and how there's a certain amount of, there's different schools of thought, and a lot of people think that you should just get your whole mess out in that first draft and let it be as messy as it can be, and don't edit yourself, just keep the ball moving, and then you fix things and add and subtract in later drafts. Do you find, and I was just wondering, when you have all of this this research behind you, does it help to make neater first drafts? Do you kind of go into it? It sounds like you go into it obviously with a really awesome detailed outline, and that you sounds like you know your characters really well. So that must help. And then adding in all of this research, does that also help so that your first draft is maybe less messy than the typical writer's first draft?
I think so, maybe. Yeah, I do. I think writing in scenes helps a lot, because when I first started writing, it was all narrative summary, and I hadn't really, I counted them like 64 writing craft books. And once I realized I did not know what I was doing, I read all of them and would stay up nights and all of that. So I feel like I taught myself how to do it. But at first it was just, narrative summary, which is like the worst possible boring thing. And then once I realized you have to write in scenes, or at least I have to write in scenes. If I just put together an outline with all those scenes, I could just pick a scene and say, I feel like writing the scene today. And for me, that keeps it fresh. And so when it goes onto the page, it's somewhat baked. Then I send that to my husband to read. He's my first reader, and he was so excited about the Civil War book. Oh my God, he could not wait. He's a huge Civil War fan, but he loves World War I and II as well. But so I'm really lucky that I had him to help, and so he reads it. And I'm sure you have first readers too. It's really hard to read a first draft. It's not easy, and it's kind of boring sometimes. But he's really good, because he'll say, take this out, I don't like this. So that's kind of my first kind of making it better. And then my kids read it, and they're in their 30s, two women. And my son reads it later when it's an audiobook. But my daughters, they give me unbelievable notes. It's like having two early editors. They're really, really good. Yeah. And I really want it to be accessible to younger people as well, not just, I'm 63, so I need that kind of younger point of view. And they're always saying, make it weirder, so it pushes me to do that, which I think is really good. And they love, anything that's kind of like twisted. And so, that helps me. But then once they're done, and they give me, like my daughter for my fourth book, which is a Cold War novel, she gave me, oh God, like 5 pages of notes. It was exhausting, honestly. But, it's super helpful, because it helps you kind of get things to a place where, your agent and your editor can read it. So yeah, I think I'm somewhere, I don't really believe in it like a super messy first draft, because my books are, with 3 different point of view characters, it's a lot. So I have to be somewhat kind of organized when I put it on the page.
Right. That makes sense. But it sounds like, I think you said that you sometimes don't write chronologically. Sometimes you'll jump in and write a scene that's maybe further ahead than you've gotten. And
actually, that's not really true. But if I feel like one day a scene's not working, and I'll either just throw it out completely, because I don't know, for me, writer's block is more about if that scene that I've planned just isn't working. Sometimes you think it will. I'm sure you go through this too, where you think, oh, I thought that was going to be so good. And then if it isn't, I go on to the next thing. Or I say, I'm not in the mood to do that. I'll come back and do that tomorrow. But usually I try and do it. For some reason, that just works out with 3 characters to do it more chronologically.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Do you have a favorite part of the process? Like, do you, in terms of, I don't know, if we break it down into research, writing, and then sort of the whole business of publication, is there anywhere in there that you would identify as your most enjoyable favorite part?
Wow, the business of publication. You make it sound so formal, which I guess it is. Yeah. I think my favorite part of the writing process is definitely having, like, where I am with my fourth book right now. It's done, but I can still add all that wonderful kind of like particularity to it, all the stuff that's on all of those, the legal pads. And the pressure's off at that point, because I feel like, I don't know, do you feel this way too, that every new book, you think, I know I can do this, but there is that anxiety a little bit
Yeah.
of, will this work?
Mhm.
Do you feel that way too?
Absolutely. I keep thinking with every book that it will get easier because as you say, I have the confidence that I have done it before and I know that I can do it, but oddly that doesn't translate to it feeling any easier to do it all over again.
Isn't it weird? I bet I bet authors, that's a universal thing
Yeah.
because there's no guarantee. And oftentimes you get paid up front, at least part of it. So you're like, uh-oh, there's a lot of pressure, let's put it that way. And your fans and, you want to deliver.
Yeah.
So I think that comes into it too. But so that's my favorite part but I also really, 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 unfortunately for me, love the book tour and the Lost Roses. Oh my God. I had the most fun book tour planned. And I was on the tarmac in Alabama, flying to Houston. And my agent called and said, you have to come home.
No.
COVID. Yeah. It was like right before St. Patrick's Day last year. And all the fun ones were coming up. I mean, I had done some incredible fun things, but I was going to California and Florida and, it was March, so I couldn't wait to get down there, but it'll happen again. But definitely I feel like that's my oxygen when I get to go out and talk to people, and they're just so funny and supportive, and they tell me stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty anxious to get out and do that again. So yeah, that's my favorite part.
Yeah, it is hard to be doing these events and know that there's an audience there, but and I promise everyone I will take a look at the chat in a few minutes and read some questions from there as well. So feel free to enter your questions. But I know it's not the same as getting to ask the author directly, and for Martha to see your faces and hear you all. It's a very different experience to be doing this virtually. But that's interesting that you enjoy that, because I know there are a lot of authors that are such introverts, and the whole going out into the world and promoting their book part of it is one of the hardest parts.
I'm a huge introvert, but at some point I feel like, I don't know, for some reason, I love that process. I really do, especially Ohio for some reason. I had so much fun in Ohio on the first Lost Roses book tour. It's just so, and I've traveled some, but never kind of in the heart of the country. And it was, I don't know, Pennsylvania, Ohio. It was really, really fun. I mean, there's some real readers in Ohio, let's put it that way. I mean, they've even come out to the Bellamy Verde house in Connecticut. So it's intense. And I feel like my husband calls them super fans, and I just love connecting with them because they love Caroline Faraday so much. And I mean, now that sleepy little town of Bethlehem where the house is, it's changed forever. I mean, 80 people a day. Yeah, 80 people a day they were averaging at the peak before COVID. And the house is open again May 1st. So it's really exciting. But I think they were used to like one person a day. And then all of a sudden buses started coming with book groups. And so it got kind of crazy.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you have like a plaque on the wall now, or is there...
I have a little, they call it the shrine. There's a room where they have like this glass case with my first outline in it, and it's so cute. I love it. And it's fun. When I went up to see when I go to some of the houses of famous writers like Edith Wharton, which is pretty close by to me up in Massachusetts, I just geek out on all that stuff. So it's really fun. And sometimes I go over and just walk around there when tours are happening, and if I have to go in and sign books really quickly, and it's just fun to talk to people. It's really because it's so positive. That story has really helped a lot of people, and they always say if the rabbits could get through that, then I can get through, whatever people are going through. And I feel that that's true with Sunflower Sisters as well, that, they go through a lot of really hard stuff. I mean, just being alive in the Civil War was really hard. Yeah. So
Yeah, well, even among the wealthy Woolsey family, there's so much illness and loss of, young and old life. And, it's just a very hard time to live.
Yeah, that all came from the letters. And oh my God, I sobbed writing those parts. We can't talk about that obviously because
Yep.
it's a spoiler, but oh my God, it's just so hard. And that was a part, they had all those mourning traditions for a reason. It was just a part of everyday life. Yeah,
Right.
but I can relate to that now with what we see on TV with COVID and everything. I mean, for them it was typhus and smallpox, but yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about these super fans and having produced these big hit novels. Has it affected the way you write, or has it added pressure in positive or negative ways? Do you feel that it's changed your process at all?
Yes. And I used to read reviews. Reviews. With Lilac Girls, I was obsessed. I just could not stop reading them. It was really bad. And so finally, and then with Lost Roses a little bit too. So finally for this book, my husband finally said, I'll read the reviews. And if there's anything horrible, I will tell you. And that has been such a weight lifted off. I cannot tell you. Now, I forgot the question completely. Isn't that terrible? I started thinking about reviews.
No, just no, you're answering it. I mean, how has the success of the books changed the way you approach writing and
Right.
dealing with all of this?
So at first with Lilac Girls, I would read reviews and it would say, oh, it took too long to get into this book. And so that was so in my head with Lost Roses. And I just thought, I think they're good notes to have, but I think I was just getting a little too concerned about that. So I finally just started thinking, you know what, I'm just going to write what I think is the way to do it and not be so concerned about it, because I think it does get into your head a little bit. But otherwise, I just did it the same way. I knew I wanted to have a flower in the title because originally Random House had retitled the book. I had originally titled it The Rabbits of Ravensbrück. And one time I was having lunch with my editor, Kara Caesar, who is so great. And I was living in Atlanta and I was complaining about I couldn't plant a lilac in Atlanta because they take a harsh winter before they can bloom. And she said, oh, Lilac Girls, that's what they went through too. They couldn't bloom unless they went through all what they did. And so they named it Lilac Girls. And at first I was, sad because I had gotten so attached to that other title. But then I love the flower thing. So when it came to Sunflower Sisters, I thought, okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find a flower. And as you know from reading it, there's kind of a spoiler about that flower and what that meant in the Underground Railroad, which I thought was so cool. So I guess that's a tease. But yeah, so it was a luxury in a way because I had written those other two books from the three POVs. I kind of had it down a little bit, and I just had to, put in what I wanted to do. Now, with my fourth book and my fifth book, they're slightly different genres because I went to Random House and said, I want to do something completely different. And the fourth book, this is answering one of the questions. So I
Oh, good.
figured
I haven't even looked at them, but I was going to ask you. So good.
And I feel like I needed to do something different and something a little, just to set me apart from this kind of, this isn't a series, but these three books about Caroline's family. And so it was really, I pitched them on a Cold War novel that was a little bit more of a thriller. And you can't really call it a thriller, but it is it's got a strong mystery thread to it, and it takes place all over the world. It is two women, one American, and there were four American women that survived Ravensbrück. And she's half Jewish. And then there is my other character is French, and they survived Ravensbrück, and something really horrible happened to each one of them at the hand of a really horrible doctor. So it's all about them hunting him down all over the world. And it's really, really fun. So that one is a completely different genre. And it's been really fun to kind of break out of, what I had been doing and trying something completely different. In some ways, it's very similar because it does some of the same characters as Lilac Girl, some of the same characters from like Herta Oberhauser's in it, but it is, just briefly. And then the fifth book, I can't believe I'm saying fifth, is a real actual thriller, and it takes place, it's a contemporary thriller, and it takes place in my house where I am right now. And I live on a hay farm, and we're kind of, I'm getting scared thinking about it. But my husband said, we have to move, he thinks, because when I finish the book, because I've scared myself so badly writing that fifth book. Yeah, it's scary.
Oh my God.
But it's fun that it's in my own town. It's thinly disguised. I live in Connecticut. It's called Liberty, Massachusetts, where it's set, but it's actually my town. So yeah, I mean, that keeps it fresh and fun for me. And it seems like every time I talk to readers about it, they're on board. So it's really nice that they're not saying, oh no, you have to stay, I want you to write about, ancient Greece or something, because I don't know, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, well, I think everyone's hooked and we're ready to go on whatever journey you take us on next. So we're right there with you. So have you written both of these books already?
Yes.
Wow.
I have. Now I'm at the phase, I wrote the thriller first because I didn't know which one Random House would want first. And then they said that they wanted the Cold War book first, which I think was very smart because it kind of transitions away. It is still historical fiction. It's just a more kind of, it's a super exciting, lively, thrillery kind of, it's almost like, what is the book? Oh, it's so sad that I can't remember the name of this book ever. Tom Hanks was in the movie, and it was in Rome. I bet in the chat they'll tell us. And it had to do with the Catholic Church. Anyway, it has a little bit of that feeling to it because it's such an international book. And I'm sure someone will. The Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it has a little bit of like a female Da Vinci Code feeling to it, which is kind of fun. And yeah, it's all about hunting Nazis, and it's so fun. And again, I had done a lot of that research. I knew about Ravensbrück. It doesn't really, a lot of it doesn't take place there. It takes place in 1950, like 8 years after they get out. But it's still, I still can draw on all of that, kind of firsthand knowledge about Ravensbrück.
Right. Okay, well, let's take a look at these chat questions and maybe I'll just throw some out to you. Is that okay?
Great.
Okay. Let's see here. So I think we've answered what are some future books you're working on, or is there a third future book that we should know about?
Actually, I'm also getting ready to work on an Audible original.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is really fun.
That's exciting. And will that come out? Where will that, do you know?
Sooner. That is a project with Audible.
Okay.
And yeah, we're just kind of settling the details right now, but it is a completely different genre. It's a friend of mine, and her story, I haven't told anyone about it really, but it's about her story of her life, how she I probably shouldn't talk about it, but it's going to be really good. So I hope people stay tuned.
Yeah, we will for sure.
But that's kind of historical fiction as well, because it takes place in the 80s, which is such a fun time. And so, yeah, I'm writing it with her. So have you ever written anything with someone?
No, I haven't. I'm curious. We need a whole nother Zoom to talk about that experience.
Yeah, so far it's really, really fun. So I know Kate Quinn does it a lot. I need to talk to her about that because she collaborates with like 5 people. But yeah, so that's going to be a whole new thing too. I know it sounds like a lot, but I'm here in Connecticut with not a lot going on. So I like to work, so it's perfect.
That's great. Okay. Neha says, I loved Lost Roses. I had a hard time reading about Varinka because I just couldn't identify with her decisions and choices. Was it difficult for you to write her?
Varinka was so young. I think I had to kind of tap into Varinka, for everybody, is the peasant girl in Lost Roses. And that story is about Caroline's mother. And it was really interesting to see where Caroline got her philanthropy from. But her mother brought a group of aristocrats, former aristocrats that lost everything in the Bolshevik Revolution. And one of those was Sophia, Eliza's very best friend. And Varinka is the nanny to her son, to that woman's son in Russia. And Varinka decides that she's always wanted a baby very badly, and she knows she'll never have one because she's in this abusive relationship with someone that, there's a spoiler about him. Ooh, he's creepy. But yeah, she takes Sophia's child, and Sophia's a cousin to the Tsar. So he's like a royal child. And so this young peasant girl takes this baby and does not give him back. And it's really bad. But so, yeah, I was frustrated with her too. But, she wasn't a typical kind of villain for me. Because Herta Oberhauser was, I think, and in this book, Anne May Wilson is definitely in that camp. But it was a little difficult writing her. Yeah, it was easier for me to write the, 45-year-old character. But it was, I really ended up liking her, and I loved her mother. I thought she was one of my favorite characters in the book. I love this question. Was the journey of becoming an author at a later age challenging?
Oh, good.
I love it. I guess, I kind of already talked about that a little bit in terms of it was more writing a book, Jamie Ford, the author of Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, who's so wonderful, blurbed Lilac Girls for me, beautiful blurb. And he said, when I snuck onto the New York Times list with Lilac Girls in the hardcover, and he wrote me a note and said, "Welcome to Thunderdome." And I just thought, oh my God, he is so right. But I think no matter what age that happens to you, if you're not if you don't have an MFA, if you're not kind of schooled in writing, it is, it's a huge, steep learning curve. And that's what happened to me. So yeah, I think that was it more than being older. Although I was once on a panel, I won't say where it was, but everyone on the panel was under 30 years old, and I think under 25. And then there's me. And so that kind of stuff is a little bit hard because they're all talking, and they asked everybody, what are you reading? And they were saying, oh, Elena Ferrante and, Edith Wharton. And I was reading like some thriller, a really good thriller actually, but Black Eyed Susans, I think was the name. It was really good. So I talked about that, and I just felt like, there's a lot of self-doubt, I think, when you come into it late, because there's all these very literary women who I admire hugely, but at the same time, I have to be me and just kind of, I am what I am. So I think that kind of stuff is a little bit hard, but I've gotten better at that, I think, as time goes on. But thank you for that question.
Yeah, that's a
North
good
of the
one.
equator.
Do you see any others that stand out to you that you want to answer? Or I can just keep.
Did you work outside the home before you started writing novels? That's a great Pixie. That's a great question. Usually when I don't have that long video at the beginning, I talk a little bit more about where I was in my life before all of this happened. And I had been an advertising copywriter. I was actually yesterday did an event with Robin on Reading with Robin, and we started talking about it. And my daughter posted one of the commercials that I had done for Uncle Ben's Rice. I was like, oh my, this is the most embarrassing thing ever. But so that was back in like 1980. And once I had my third child, actually I had a boy who kicked the slats out of his crib and walked out. I think I kept him in there too long. He was a large child, but I thought, I can't keep working because I was just overwhelmed. I am not the organized person that can do that. And so, yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom and, played tennis and golf when the kids are in school. And I did feel like something was missing, I have to say. And I did keep writing things like the mother-daughter liturgy at my daughter's Catholic high school. And why I did not catch on that I loved doing that so much. And I may have gotten a little too involved in their college essays. Not proud, not my proudest mom moment. I would meet them Saturday morning with one of these pads and a pencil, like ready. And they were like, Mom, no, I cannot, please. So anyway, some of my best work, but they hated that and rejected everything that I tried to push on them, which is good because I think college admissions people can, they know if it's you that, a kid's voice versus me. But anyway, I digress.
So at no point in those years were you secretly wanting to be a writer?
No, I had been a copywriter and
Right.
I really wasn't good, as some of those commercials can attest. I really was. I was writing salad dressing commercials, I remember, and I was trying to make them continuing characters. And my boss was like, no, that doesn't work. So I should have been more self-aware and thought, why don't I try that as a book? But I honestly didn't know that you could even do that. I thought that, I don't know where I thought authors came from. I loved historical fiction, but I didn't think, oh, I can do that. So once it did dawn on me, that was a huge revelation. But yeah, I knew something was missing. And so I was kind of ready when I went up to the Bellamy Faraday House and kind of discovered that, but it wasn't until years later that I actually did anything with it.
That's amazing.
Oh, quick reminder. I think our time is up. I think they're telling us.
Oh, we're getting kicked off here?
I think we're getting kicked off. Yes.
Right.
Oh, we have to turn our cameras off. We have our instructions. Meg, thank you so much. You are amazing.
You are amazing. This has been such a pleasure. I just have enjoyed every moment. So thank you so much for sharing all of your insight and process. It's really been wonderful to listen to.
Thank you. And I can't wait to hear more about You, Me, and the Sea and the next book. What are you doing for your next book?
It is finally written, but I can't really say much about it yet, but hopefully soon.
Okay, good. Well, we'll stand by.
Okay. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you both so much. What a wonderful conversation. It was so delightful. And thank you so much, Martha, for telling us so much about your process and your upcoming books. We have something to look forward to. And I want to just remind everybody that you can purchase your book at Book Passage. You can purchase Martha's books. You can purchase Meg's books. You can do it on our website or just give us a call and we'll be happy to send it to you or put it on hold for you to pick up. We do have contactless pickup if you'd like. And it's a fabulous book. You don't have to have read Lilac Girls, but if you haven't, you'll want to read Lilac Girls. And so come on in and pick them all up. And thank you all to our audience for participating today. We have lots more events coming up. We have ticketed events. We have more free events. We have a great one coming up on April 3rd, this Saturday at 4 o'clock Pacific time with Sue Monk-Kidd and Elaine Petricelli. So join us for that. And everybody stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.